Hey, Chamber members, Alan Waters here, your Director of Marketing and Communications at the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce and your Words of Wisdom podcast. Today I'm joined by
Terri Welch with Paint and Fun Ceramics.
Welcome, Terri. You have been here more than enough times that we're not diving into that what is success, those kind of questions. Instead, we left off last time saying we wanted to talk a little bit more about team building, corporate team building. Before we get too much into like the details of it, why on a personal level do you feel like team building is needed?
Well, especially post-pandemic, I think team building is essential for companies looking to bring people together. I mean, we spent the better part of 3 years apart, people working remotely, people just alone in their homes. And so we need those social connections. As humans, it's an innate human need to have those social connections. And when you're building a team for your company, people are more productive when they enjoy working with the people that they work with and when they know them better. So I think that's essential, and that's why team building is so important.
And within team building, how do you get past the icebreakers, the like really basic stuff that I guess has its purpose, but on a surface level it feels really shallow? How do you get into more of the depth?
Well, that's where art comes in, and that's what I'm so passionate about it, is because art stimulates different parts of the brain, and it lets people reduce their defenses. So like I got to thinking about team building activities like ropes courses and things like that. And you're into physical limitations for some people or fears with some people. But art is something anybody can do, even if people, when they say they're not an artist, it doesn't really matter because it's the act of creating something.
Right.
And that just kind of helps people open up more, and it leads to more genuine and honest communication.
And I know with the ropes courses, like you said, they have their physical limitations, but I know they're building trust in that way of, look, if someone's not holding that rope, belaying everything the way it's supposed to, you can fall and you can really hurt. It's a lot of real on trust. Yes. When you're doing more of the art pieces, what are you building through that with the team itself?
Well, mostly we're building communication. And I think that's what's really lacking now, mostly because of all of the social media and the remote working and not being face-to-face with people. It amazes me the number of young people that I meet today that have difficulty looking someone else in the eye when they're speaking with them. And I think that we need, as leaders in our community, to help rebuild those skills, help the younger folks learn. And it's not just young folks. I don't want to single them out, but I think that because they were coming through school or college during the pandemic, and when all of this, everybody had to be away from each other, they lost something there. I think we all did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember going from seeing people in person every day, being able to go to a bar, to those happy hours over Zoom got so old so quickly.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
It didn't feel, and that's where I kind of ask coming from the shallow portion, because I feel like so many companies did try to do that during COVID, for better or for worse, where they were like, oh, let's bring everybody together for a happy hour. But then it became, all right, great, I'm working for an additional hour, talking to people over Zoom when I could be watching Netflix or TV.
Yeah.
So how do you go about through team building? What are the different activities and things people can dive into with you?
So we can customize any type of activity depending on what the company is looking for. So that's the first thing that I do when somebody comes to me and they say that they want to do a team building activity. I ask them what their goals are. What would they like to accomplish? Is it creating better communication between people? Is it eye contact skills? Is it different relationships, whatever it happens to be? And then I'll custom design a program based on what their needs are. One of our most popular programs is the Mug Switch. And people answer a a questionnaire, either anonymously or not. The company can choose whether they want to keep it anonymous. I like the anonymous because I think it's more fun.
Right.
And it's some generic questions that the members of the team would answer. Then they all go into a bucket. People draw them out, and they have to create a mug based on what's on this little information sheet. With our direction, of course, we give them lots of tips and help them out. But at the end of that, while everybody's laughing and talking and joking about, oh my gosh, I got somebody who likes lizards, or, you know, whatever the case may be, then they stand up at the end and say what inspired their creation and who they think on their team they made it for.
Okay.
And, you know, right or wrong, it's good for a lot of laughs. It creates that more personal bond. And then at the end of it, everybody has something that was created for them by one of their teammates. So I think that helps build a closer bond with people.
And I know you said you can custom create a lot of those pieces. Is it mostly dealing with the ceramics aspects, or do you also do some that are like canvas based?
Oh, we do everything. We can do a canvas-based project. We do a fun project called speed painting. So depending on the size of the group, we divide into teams. Everybody has a canvas, and they have to, whoever starts off, they have to paint a portion of it. And they run back
I see.
and give that to their teammate, and the next teammate paints a portion of it. And so it's, you know, it's just a fun way to create teamwork, communication, you know, because the first person has to say, okay, I'm going to start with this. You need, you know, and who's going to go next, and how are we going to make this happen? So they get a few minutes to kind of strategize.
Okay. And this, I don't know if this comes into the team building exercise or it's a different thing that you offer, but I think about what's becoming really popular is the Bob Ross paint nights. Do you do something like that where it is you're all kind of being guided by something and letting them have the trust factor of, I remember doing it, and within the first 5 minutes I was like, oh my God, this looks terrible. I don't want anyone to see it. But it's the trusting of the process. Do you have anything that's along those lines?
Absolutely. And we do that with acrylic. And we can't call it the Bob Ross technique because that's copyrighted.
Right.
But and on top of that, you have to be certified by the Bob Ross Academy
to
be able to teach those, which is a goal of mine down the road. A week in Florida, 2 weeks in Florida, that would be all right.
Hey, yeah.
But that's where the Bob Ross Academy is.
I didn't realize you had to be certified for those things. I mean,
Yes.
I obviously a lot of people that are doing them at home, it's not the same thing.
Correct.
It's following along his videos themselves, but that's cool to know that that's still kind of his legacy is continuing in that way. That's interesting. So aside from that, other team building things, do you have any recommendations people should come into the room prepared for, things to make them more open and ready for the communication, ready for that team building?
Well, I think the big thing is just to relax. You know, you're not going out climbing trees and doing hard things. You're coming in and you're just going to get creative. And whether you're good at it or you're not, you're going to have something that you've created. You know, I think about my 3-year-old granddaughter, and she comes in and she just doesn't have a care in the world and paints and paints and paints. And it turns out beautiful, you know, and her mom and dad love it, you know. And the thing about it is art is in the eye of the beholder. You know, it's just supposed to be fun and relaxing. And I think that's what people miss sometimes, is that when you're in that space and you're creating something, you're not thinking about what's for dinner or what you're going to fix for dinner, or do you have to go to the grocery store, or, oh, that report was due yesterday. And you just don't think about those things because you're focused in the moment. And I think that's what art does for our brains. It just helps kind of bring things down and gives us a little peace amongst our chaos, because our lives have become chaotic.
Yeah, absolutely. Within that, so you create things, do different custom things. What kind of size teams? Is there such thing as too big or too small?
No, there's no team that's too big or too small. We did a sorority group of 160 girls at Virginia Tech.
Oh, wow.
So if you've got a huge team, we can handle it. We would have to customize and, get some extra help in there, but we do whatever it takes. And I've done teams as small as 4 or 5 people. So.
And obviously, I'm assuming 160 people you had to go there. Is it a larger portion of you going to places, or are there more people that come to you for these?
I think more people are coming to us because maybe they don't realize that we will go to them. So if there's a company out there and you have 50, 60, 100 people and you want them to do an art activity, we can come to you, or we can work with one of our partners. We work with Eastern Divide and Zeppeli's and a lot of other locations, Bellevue Estate Winery, which I love going up there, and they have a beautiful space. So, we can partner with another location if your location is not going to be suitable.
That makes sense. With team building with some of this and coming and working with you, what are some of the pieces that are taking back? How do you think that's helping the office dynamics? How do you think it's helping their productivity within the office? Why do you think it helps, and how should they kind of be approaching this as they're getting ready to do this with you?
Well, I think that the activities that we do help because it utilizes a part of people's brains that don't often get utilized at work, especially if you're in really high pressure situations like nursing or like engineering, where you're always working with numbers and designs and, specifics. Whereas our art can be more fun. Our art can be as, simple as just pouring a color on a piece.
Right.
You don't have to go into all the details and measurements and things like that. So I think that helps stimulate that part of our brains, which also makes us more open to other things and to communication. And, studies have shown that art helps students in school with math and science and some of their other subjects. So I think that translates easily into the workplace as well.
I think about how many times I've heard of football players going and doing ballet because it helps with their speed, it helps with their maneuverability. I think the same practice applies to a lot of different forms of art.
Absolutely.
You're able to take some of those pieces, and it's not a direct one-to-one. I feel like if I come in and I find, oh, wow, I can paint that clay really well, it's not like I'm going into the chamber and all of a sudden going to be able to just like put that into some other form, but I can still take the creativity that went into it and think about it in the way I make my graphics. Or, well, I'm trying to think of an example of something else, and I don't know what other people do, but I feel like people can take that and learn from it as they go.
They can, and then they have a tangible reminder of the experience, and that can bring up, feelings of closeness with someone that they're working with. I think it's important that people that work together like each other and try and get along and communicate well. And so I think that the art piece and the team building piece in general, whether it's with me or whether it's another team building activity, I think that that's important for teams to be able to learn how to communicate well and learn how to work together. And when you can go to a coworker and say, hey, I have a question about this, or I need help with this, it makes your team more productive. And I think that because we were isolated for so long and we had to learn how to do things alone, I think now we need to re-stimulate that community and that bond that you can create in an office or hospital or school setting.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's good to relearn, like, hey, my relationship with my coworkers doesn't have to end at the door.
Right.
I can build some of that more familiarity with people, and it does lend to better working conditions ultimately.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, people spend sometimes more time with their coworkers than they spend at home.
Yeah, that's since having Cora, that was the biggest eye-opening to me is I'm here in the office more than I see her on a daily basis. And that's tough, but you're right. I mean, a lot of us, it's 9 to 5, and not always, but roughly it's 40 hours a week.
Right.
At least 40 hours of that week is also spent asleep or more. So getting those pieces in, making sure that you're in a healthy environment, I feel like is very important.
Absolutely.
Being in an unhealthy environment can be really take a big toll on people. So, well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to kind of flip the script in the second half. While we've been talking about team building, we're going to talk about building a team on that second part. Explore your creativity with paint your own pottery, wheels, clay, and more at Paint and Fun Ceramics, where you're the master designer. Your creative vision becomes reality with the mediums they provide, whether you're a painter, a sculptor, or something else entirely. Take advantage of their online bookings, where you can sign up, show up, and get right to work creating your masterpiece, whether it be a team building exercise, fun with the family, or a unique date night. Paint and Fun Ceramics has you covered. With over 1,000 different pottery pieces, more than 200 glaze colors to bring your masterpieces to life, they have options that are even food safe. Or if you're in a rush, have make and take painting options as well. For more information, go to paintandfunceramics.com. That's paintandfunceramics.com. Back to the episode. All right, we're back. Before we dive in, I want to thank Grand Home Furnishings for providing our chairs, our rug here, making the room more homely, but also really helping with our sound quality. So thank you, Grand, for those pieces. So building a team, I feel like, can be one of the most challenging parts of being a small business owner. I was talking to Casey Blouse recently, and we were talking about when you bring in an employee, you have to get rid of some of those certain pieces. Like, my expectations for myself cannot be the same expectations I'm setting for someone else. We've just got different pieces. For you, what is one of the first starting pieces you do when you're looking at, who's putting in an application or when it's time to grow the team?
Well, the first thing that I look for is personality, because that's the one thing I cannot teach. I can teach people how to art. I can teach them how to paint. I can teach them how to do stained glass blowing, all of that. But I cannot teach personality. And so that's the biggest thing for me is, and a lot of people nowadays have online applications. I do not. And the reason I don't is because I want to meet that person. If you want to come work with me, I got to meet you. I can't see you from behind a computer screen and see what kind of personality you have.
Right. I feel like so often, and I've kind of come up through the mix of that. It used to be you'd hear, oh, if you want to get a job, make sure you go knocking on doors. And nowadays, most places, if you go knock on their door, they're not going to hire you. So going and making that change, I really commend you for that. Within that, the personality piece, is there a certain piece of that you're looking for? Is there a way that as you're building that team, okay, this person is very personable, but their personality isn't a right fit for here? How do you, as a business owner, as a manager, how do you kind of start looking at some of those pieces?
That's really hard to gauge. I mean, that kind of thing, that those nuances take time to develop. And so I usually try to do a working interview where I bring somebody in on a busy Saturday and I have them shadow me. And I watch how they interact with other people, not just with me. And that kind of gives me a good idea if they can handle, the craziness of a busy Saturday in the middle of Christmas season. Or if, working in the back room and loading the kiln might be more their speed. So I try to see where people will fit the best within the organization.
And you used a great word there, which was the development aspect. And where do you go as a business owner in interviews and say, because I feel like it is very, very rare for someone to walk in for an interview, hand you a resume, and be 100% of the way there for what they need to be. how do you gauge, all right, this is someone that is going to be worth putting in the time to develop versus, all right, this is not going to be the right fit for now. It could be later. I know it's kind of back to that. It takes a lot of time, but beyond those pieces, is there anything a business owner can be preparing themselves to look forward? Is it looking inwardly and thinking, like I said, managing those expectations?
Well, I think you definitely have to manage expectations. I mean, I grew up in a time where you didn't ask whose job it was. You just did whatever needed to be done. And that's the way I was brought up. And, that's not the way it is now. And so I've had to step back on and make sure that I'm clear in my communication. And sometimes I still stumble with that.
Right.
Because I think, okay, that's common sense. But it may not be common sense to someone else.
Right, yeah.
So that I do. And more about what I look for in an interview or in a working interview, if I'm doing that, is initiative. So are they taking it upon themselves to clean off a table when people leave? Or are they waiting for direction to do that? I'm more likely to hire someone who took that initiative and didn't wait for me to say, go do this, because then I know that they're going to take initiative on other things.
Right.
And I would rather someone take initiative and make a mistake and me train them in the right way to do it, or the way I think is the right way to do it anyway, because my way may not always be the right way.
Right.
But I think that that's where we struggle in the different generations, because taking initiative was always taught to us. But I think a lot of what I see with the younger generation now is they wait to be instructed.
And well, what I talked to Casey about in this is that I think there's also, you said something really, we know that. To us, it's common sense. To us, it's what happens. But I also think there's part of that as a business owner, as someone that's leading the charge, in that we know that if we don't have food on the table. We don't have money coming to the bank. And so for us, it's not even, I've thought about doing it. It's, if I don't do it, no one will. So I think there's some of that too, that, I've seen, Ella Prevet is a wonderful example. When she interned here, she was quick to do things. But she also runs her own business. She sees a mom that has run her own business. She's seen that, and it's hard because that's not everybody's training. It's not the world. When you've got that team, how do you go about continuing that development beyond those pieces? So, how do you work on the communication aspects between one another? You mentioned when a mistake is made, finding the correct way, whatever that may be. How do you go about doing so? Is it, I think about the old metaphor, is it the carrot or the stick? I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's some kind of amalgamation. Where does that fall for you?
Well, mostly it just falls in just additional training. So, like, for example, in my store, everything's breakable. So when a staff member breaks a piece, it's like, okay, I'm not going to get mad and yell. I'm going to instruct them on, okay, we need to pay closer attention. We need to be in the moment, whether we're dusting the shelves or whether we're restocking items, whatever the case may be. And then when other people break things, it's a matter of, okay, we need to acknowledge that, let them know, a lot of people think that it's a tax deduction, that loss is a tax deduction. But for a small business, it's really not.
Right.
We don't have lots of things that we can take off on our taxes. So it's really a loss out of our paycheck. And so we just have to educate people. I think that's the biggest thing. And
when you're doing that, I know it's going to be a little bit different for some of this, but how do you go from, again, managing that expectation of this is how I would do it? What you've done isn't how I've done it. That doesn't mean that it's incorrect. How do you go from finding that balance where you're like, okay, this is great, I would do it slightly different. How do you make that balance where it's not your way or the highway?
So that's something that I've learned over a long time because I have control issues. I mean, that's just the way it is. I'm a type A personality. I'm a hard D on the DISC assessment. So I've had to adapt. And that has been more with educating myself. So as a leader, and I learned this from Dr. Sharon Scott, leaders are readers. I mean, that's one of the things that she said long time ago that just stuck with me. And so I read a lot of business books, and I read a lot of team building books, and I read a lot of things on how to bring your team together and how to let go of some of the responsibility. That's been very, very difficult for me. And fortunately for me, I found a manager that I can trust, and that she doesn't do things exactly the way that I do them, but she does them well. And she keeps me on track, and she's developed herself as well so that I have that trust and I know that I can count on her. And so I think that that's important for employees too, no matter where you work, is educate yourself. Learn what your boss is looking for and try to work with that. And if you can't, then maybe it is time to go somewhere else or look for another position or find somewhere that you could be happier. And
within that, because I struggle with that too. There's some things that I'm like, oh, but to me, I always try to go back, even when it's not what I want. I look at, all right, well, these are the positives of what you did. This is what I do differently. Where do you go from there in terms of the initiative where it's, I wanted you to take that initiative. You did the initiative. That is not anywhere near, not even to the mistake level, but hey, that's actually something we don't want to happen. Where do you start to scale back some of those pieces? Not getting people not to take the initiative, but to think more like you, not less like what they originally were trying to do.
I think that that's difficult. As a small business owner, one of the things that we talk about in our team meetings is you have to think like a business owner. Even though you don't own the business, I want you to think like a business owner. And these are the things that we have to think about. And I kind of go through them. And this is why we have to think about it. So not only giving them the what, but the why. And then even with business owners, I think sometimes we think with our own pocketbooks. And so if we don't have a whole lot of money, we assume other people don't have a whole lot of money. And I think it's the same thing with employees. So they can look at pricing and say, oh, well, that's just priced too high. But really, it's not. You have to look at the margins, and you have to look at a lot of other things than just the cost of that particular item.
Right.
So
I see that a lot in photography where people are like, it's that much an hour per session. Why do you get paid that much an hour? And it's like, well, that's not an hour's worth of work. That is this hour plus the editing time, plus the equipment, plus the insurance, plus this. There's so many factors, like you said, go into pricing. It's not all cut and dry.
Right.
Even, I think that happens a lot in the food industry too. Trust me, I get it. When I go to McDonald's and the thing I used to get was $5 is now $12.99, it hurts. But that's sometimes the cost associated with pieces.
Oh, yeah. Everything factors in. I mean, when the first thing that factored in for small businesses is when the minimum wage was raised, you know, and I think it was a good thing in some ways, but in others, I question that because small businesses make up huge swaths of the economy, and small businesses typically were designed for people that needed a part-time job, either while they were going to school or to supplement their full-time job. A lot of small businesses were not meant to create X number of full-time jobs, right? And so with the increase in that labor cost, everything had to go up.
Yep. I mean, the margins got smaller. It just is what it is. So through this, You've built the team, you've developed the team, you've worked with one another. You hit that moment where it's just not clicking. How do you make that decision as a business owner? When do you start to realize, all right, the amount of work versus the amount of outcome is not gelling? It's time for us to have a break.
Well, one of the things that I'm trying to teach myself is to be slow to hire and quick to fire. And that might sound awful, but I have been the opposite for most of my career, especially as a business owner. I don't want to hurt people's feelings, and I don't want to make them feel bad about themselves. But at the same time, I have to look at, okay, is this person contributing to the growth of my company, or are they just taking advantage and doing what I call milking the clock? And so I'm in the process now of developing some rubrics that I will be using to determine within the first 2 weeks if somebody's going to be able to hang with me or not. And I think that that's important for small business owners, especially because we do spend a lot of time and a lot of energy training people and a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you're training someone, you're paying your regular person who would be there, and you're paying an additional person, even though you might not need them, just so that they can learn. So you have to take all that into consideration.
I don't remember the specific statistics, but it's vastly more expensive to bring in a new employee than it is to promote or push up a current employee. And that is kind of my next question with the communication aspects. How do you manage the parts of, all right, it's now time to promote? How do you manage the communications of, I'd like a raise? Do you tie those to reviews? Do you tie that to specific timings? Or is it more about when someone's reached a milestone?
I don't do milestones only because I think raise, I don't think everybody deserves a raise. I think you should earn your raise. And I guess that's old school way of thinking. And if somebody is going the extra mile for me and they are bringing in new business, either through their own social media posts or, you know, when I can see them going by, because I have an operations manual that really spells out everything. I have job descriptions that are very specific, and every new employee gets one. So if they have reviewed that even beyond what we did in orientation or, you know, the first day that we bring them on board, then I can see that because they know the things that they're responsible for. If I go to our studio phone and I see videos taken during their shift, then I know they're taking that initiative. So that's what I try to base it on.
Yeah.
And then I tie that to their review because we are doing reviews and going over, okay, these are the things that you're really strong on. These are the things you need to work on.
Well, any parting advice you would give to a business owner and any parting advice you'd give to someone either looking to change jobs or looking to get into the work field?
I think the biggest thing looking to get into the work field is be confident. Look your prospective new employer in the eye when you're speaking with them. Don't hang your head. Don't be afraid to shake their hand. But if you're a man, be mindful. If you're shaking the hand of a woman, don't try to break her fingers. I've had a couple of people do that in just some recent introductions, and I'm like, you know, my hand hurt afterwards.
Right.
And it shouldn't. It should be a friendly handshake, firm, but not death grip.
Yeah. I remember, until you said this, I did not think about it. I remember as a young boy, my dad teaching me how to shake the hand of someone when you're going to meet them. And it's a weird thing to think about, but it is important. I mean,
it really is.
You want to be able to go, and if someone's squeezing that hand, maybe we do need to start saying, hey, let's calm down a little bit there. So that's on the employment side. What about as a business owner?
Be open and be mindful that the people that you're interviewing are not the same. And I think as business owners, we need to be proactive and communicate well. So if something's not going right, don't hold it back and wait and stew over it. Come right out. I think even with the younger generation, they appreciate some directness and they want feedback.
Yeah. Well, tell everyone where they can find Paint and Fun Ceramics. They can stop by, get a job application if they'd like.
That's right. Paint and Fun Ceramics is located in Uptown Christiansburg Mall, right near Dick's Sporting Goods. So come on in and see us. You can reach us online or see all of our classes that we have at paintandfunceramics.com, or you can call us at 251-3386.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Terri, for being here as always. Thank you to all of our listeners for watching along, paying attention to what we have to say. Make sure you go like, download, subscribe, all of those things so you don't miss any of the episodes coming out, any of the Lunch and Learn, small business workshops, a lot of the content the Chamber's putting out there now. In the meantime, go out, invest, connect, engage, and prosper.